Hey, it is day 25 of my Read Proverbs with Me to Start 2025 series. So that means today is chapter 25, but not only that, it means we also only have 1 week left of reading Proverbs, which is so cool. If you've been reading Proverbs with me, give yourself a big... And if you haven't joined me and you don't know, this is a 31-day series I'm doing in January where I'm reading 1 chapter of Proverbs a day and posting 1 video a day sharing what I liked and what stood out to me about that chapter. So if you want to join me in reading Proverbs for this last week of January, I would love that. Or if you just want to join reading Proverbs 25 today, I'd love that too. Here is what stood out to me about chapter 25 today. Something cool I noticed about Proverbs chapter 25 is how other people in the Bible valued Solomon's Proverbs. We see it in verse 1 that says, "These are more Proverbs of Solomon, compiled by the men of Hezekiah, king of Judah." So this shows that King Hezekiah sought out the wisdom of the Proverbs of Solomon. And what we know about King Hezekiah is the Bible says this about him in 2 Kings 18:5. "There was no one like him among all the kings of Judah, either before him or after him." The second thing I noticed was verse 6 through 7 that says, "Do not exalt yourself in the king's presence, and do not claim a place among his great men. It is better for him to say to you, 'Come up here,' than for him to humiliate you before his nobles." And that verse is very similar to a lesson that Jesus taught in Luke chapter 14. As it says in Luke 14 verses 8 through 11, "When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, 'Give this person your seat.' Then, humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. But when you are invited, take the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, 'Friend, move up to a better place.' Then you will be honored in the presence of all the other guests. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted." So I liked how Jesus taught wisdom that was similar to Solomon's wisdom. And the final thing I noticed in chapter 25 are these 2 verses 21 and 22 that say, "If your enemy is hungry, give him food to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you." And these verses stood out to me because I knew I had read them somewhere else. And that somewhere else is Romans 12:20, where Paul quotes these exact verses saying the same words. So I thought it was cool that all of these very important people in the Bible were connected to Solomon's wisdom. Hezekiah sought Solomon's wisdom. Paul memorized Solomon's wisdom. And Jesus gave an illustration similar to that of Solomon's, which I thought was cool because God gave Solomon his wisdom, and obviously what Jesus said came from God as well, as Jesus says in John 12:50. So whatever I say is just what the Father has told me to say. So that is what stood out to me about chapter 25 today, and it just inspires me and reminds me of how valuable this wisdom that we're reading is. If you've joined me in reading Proverbs, I'd love to hear what you liked about chapter 25, or just what God's been speaking to you over these Proverbs. You can let me know in the comments. And if you haven't joined me and you'd like to join me for this last week of January to finish January strong, I would love that. Or if you want to start from day 1, start reading Proverbs from chapter 1, I would love that too. If you want to go through these videos, I have all the rest of the videos on my page, so I'd love for you to follow along if you want to do that. I'm looking forward to finishing out January strong and to finishing Proverbs. I'll see you tomorrow for chapter 26.